and also within the different types of qualifications that you may take at different levels and to different degrees. At the heart of SEND, this is the key message, we will find child-centred pedagogy, appreciating the individual, valuing them, advocating for them, what they can do, what we can actually take from this, what we can learn from each other. True inclusion. SEND is therefore threaded throughout all of our qualifications at every level. It's evident in safeguarding, equality, play, development and learning. And it's certainly something that's embedded in the heart of every professional on this webinar today, the importance of valuing every young person, every child for what they can bring, and to make sure that we value each individual at the centre of everything we do. I'm now going to hand back to Stacey, and Stacey's going to give us an overview of the changes in SEND. Thanks, Stacey.
Thank you, Janet. All really, really interesting. I'm just keeping an eye on the chat box as well. There's no questions as of yet. So I'm going to be talking to you about the Department for Education's early years criteria updates to the SEND qualifications. So as I said at the start, better start for children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities is at the heart of the new national plan to level up opportunities, with a key focus on ending that postcode lottery that we discussed at the start. The government sent an alternative provision green paper, which was published in March, sets out a vision for a single national SEND and alternative provision system that will introduce new standards in the quality of support given to children across education, health and care. And I just remembered I have got slides to support me with this, and was going to just leave them because I always forget that they're there. So there are new national standards across education and healthcare, and some of the main points of those is to the simplified education and healthcare plan. There'll be local inclusion partners that will be supporting the sector as well. Local inclusion dashboards, which will have lots of information there to support. There'll be a whole focus on changing culture and practice. So it's all about improving workforce training through the introduction of the new SENCO MPQ for school SENCOs and increasing the number of staff with an accredited level 3 qualification in early years settings. NCFE's revised level 3 cover the wider teaching and learning to take account of the new developments in SEND. The qualifications developed from this specification are intended to support early years practitioners to gain accreditation for the knowledge, understanding and skills they need to perform for the early years SENCO role effectively, which I think is very, very important. And I'd be really interested to see actually how many students are here today that are thinking about the role of the early years SENCO and how that might be aligned to what they're interested in. The qualifications are not mandatory. And this recommended specification has been designed by early years experts and stakeholders to supported by the Department for Education. So really has had a lot of expertise put into this qualification to ensure that it's fit for purpose and really helps in the SENCO role. The recommendations for inclusion in the qualification are SEN identification and early action, the role of the early years SENCO, supporting colleagues with children with special educational needs, which I think we all agree is really needed, and liaising with professionals or agencies beyond the setting. And that's something that some of the students in the conference today may have scratched the surface of, and very much need to think about whether that's something that they would like to do and something that they would like to be involved in when they are employed. So, excuse me. NCFE also offer a progression award. So if you're thinking of next steps in your career and thinking about what might happen after your level 3, then the level 4 award in special educational needs and disabilities may be the one. Building on the NCFE Cash Level 3 Award for Special Educational Needs Coordinators in Early Years Settings, this qualification offers CPD and is aimed at Level 3 Early Years practitioners in a private, voluntary or independent setting. The qualification is designed for those already working in lead SENCO roles, but very much something that you could aspire to do. You may wish to increase your confidence in leadership and management progression, and learners will be prepared for leadership and management in specific aspects of the SENCO role. And that includes enabling best outcomes for the children and their families, enriching professional development, liaison with parents and carers, colleagues and other professionals, and also undertaking and applying research for improved outcomes. So whilst we have given you all of that information about all of our qualifications that we do here at NCFE in terms of SEND, we really invite you to have a bit of reflection yourself about what you are doing right now and where you'd like to be maybe in the future years of your career. And I'm now going to pass over to Angie Rogers, who is going to take us through a really detailed session around PDA, which she'll explain all about if you haven't heard that terminology before. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stacey. It was really informative about the qualifications. Thank you so much. Okay, so welcome everybody. If we could go to our first slide, Stacey, that would be great. Just to give you a little bit of background, I've been in education for 30 years plus, and during that time I have worked with a whole range of children with different aspects of SEND, and particularly quite recently. And this I put together a little podcast that I felt that needed to have the child's voice, a child with PDA who was willing to share her experiences and the challenges that she faces. This will contain some of her voice, which and I really hope that you sort of take on board that that with her particular needs around PDA. So let's start first of all about what the term PDA stands for. So the diagnostic term PDA was historically from the term used by Professor Elizabeth Newson during the 1980s. And the initial description of this profile identified a gradual developing understanding of a group of children who were being referred for diagnostic assessment at Nottingham University. Most of the children were identified as complex and unusual in their development profile, which professionals linked to autism. Although seen as atypical, Newson and her colleagues were dissatisfied with this description of atypical. So they decided that actually they needed further investigation to look at more about the characteristics that were involved with these particular children. And they identified that there was an obsessional sort of avoidance of ordinary demands. And so therefore, the term they came together and it was decided that they would give this term the profile of PDA, pathological demand avoidance, which really describes their characteristics. And for parents of children with PDA, it was almost like a light bulb moment in saying, yes, that's my child. And quite often these children were overlooked and seen as avoiding these demands were sort of a type of behaviour that actually needed to be addressed. Now this is Amelie. Amelie has PDA and she's very proud of her PDA, and she would describe the term PDA as proud, different and awesome in her words. And I'd just like to show you this little clip if that's possible. Thank you, Stace. Okay, thanks, Stacey. I think we can just pause. That's just going over. Thank you very much. And as you can see, Emily is more than willing to share her experiences of her own PDA. So if we go to the next slide now, I want to have a look at the relationship with autism. Now, many of you will have worked with or had the experience of working with children with autism. And I know from the chat that I can see that some people are keen to sort of work with children on a one-to-one in the SEND sector, and you may well come across those that have autism, and observing them, you may actually discover aspects of PDA, characteristics of PDA. So if we just go to the next slide now then, Stacey.
If you can just bear with me one moment, I'm just sorting out the sound for you.
No worries, Stacey. I'm
just going to reshare. So I think it's really important that we hear Amelie in this.
Yeah,
so just wait, bear with me just 2 secs. I'm nearly there.
So while Stacey's sorting that out, I'll just talk about the understanding of the relationship with autism. So there's a cluster of traits that can be referred to as a presentation of a profile. And in some cases, this can present itself in quite different forms from what people think autism looks like. And this can often lead to a misdiagnosis, and in particular being misunderstood, which can lead to poor outcomes. Is there a slide before that, please, Stacey? No, that's fine. That's fine. We can.
Okay.
If we go to the next slide, we can pop in this trait. That would be really. Thank you, Stacey. And you can see there that, you know, that they are just some of those traits. And she recognises, Emily is able to recognise, as she's grown with her PDA, she can recognise those traits within her. And I think that's a real positive, that she's able to describe those. So moving on now, so looking at the demands, the combination of strengths and difficulties that these young people and people have, as Emily's explained. You know, the social interaction is an issue. The need for consistency, which may result in repetition or firm thoughts and behaviours, and this can often lead limit their everyday functioning. Sensory experiences are also issues that need to be sort of taken into account. And it's important to remember that those with PDA may appear to have enhanced social understanding and communication skills, as you can see from Emily. And they may use this to their advantage, but it is vital to remember that these social abilities can often mask the difficulties with processing and understanding. And we will discuss masking within the next few slides. Thank you, Stacey.
And sorry, just before we move on, there's been a question in the chat which I think is prevalent to what you were talking about. So can I just ask you? I won't interrupt you with anything else, but it just seems to be prevalent, especially for those people who can't hear the sound very well. So the traits, if you could just perhaps go through the traits and maybe tell us about it and what the traits are for PDA. Thank you.
Not a problem. Okay, so you've got within a presentation or profile, you've got your classic autism there, and then you've got the Asperger's as well syndrome, and then you've got your PDA, and within that those traits may well be, as we said, that the social interaction is there, but that need for consistency, but it's the masking. And as we go through the slides, for those of you that are working with children with autism, you may start recognizing that the masking that happens, and these children will, it's exhausting for them. So you will see that comes out in their behavior, their mannerism, the way in which they talk, and this is all part of their masking, and they will avoid situations. They will do everything in their power to avoid whatever it may be, and that could simply be putting their socks on. in the morning. This could be simply walking to school in the morning. It could be absolutely anything. And they will try and avoid those. And they're not doing it in a way that they're trying to cause issues. They're trying to because they're masking how that makes them feel inside, because they constantly worry. So if we move further on, I'm hoping the answers to those questions will naturally come. But I'm loving all the questions. It's fantastic. I can see that you're all really keen. So it's estimated that there are 700,000 children and adults with autism, and I think it's important that we have an awareness of this, particularly with those that do come through those early years, and it's that early diagnosis that's absolutely key. So schools need to provide and support for these children and young people, as well as their families, because remember, it's the families that need support here. And we need to make sure that doing, events like this just brings that awareness. And I think that's really important. And as you can see there, the government's new national strategy is one step further towards making that possible, to opening up more avenues so we can support these people and children, families. So if we move on to our next slide, this is one of the traits that's going on with PDA. It is like a tug of war in their heads. One thing they're saying, I can't do it, and I won't do it. Not I won't do it, because they want to. So many times, Amelie said to me, I really want to do that, but something is telling me that I can't do it. And there's this whole tug of war. And that's what's so exhausting for these children, and physically and mentally exhausting. And that often is shown through their behaviour. So if we could just show this clip, and I'm hoping you can all hear it in Amelie's words. And I think that sort of says it all there, that she definitely wants to, that she wants to go to school, but there's something in her mind that's preventing her from going to school. She wants to be there with her friends, and that's what's so exhausting. And this is what we need to understand with these children and young people, and ways in which we can support them. Thank you for that, Stacey. So let's look at more now of the features. Here are a number of features. It's that needing to be in control, and that can be misdiagnosed, often seen as a behavioural rather than a need. And it's driven to avoid everyday demands, any demand, like I said, even from putting socks on in the morning, using social strategies to avoid those demands. Socially able, although this may be masked because of a lack of understanding in certain situations. So for Amelie, it's quite often, it'll come across that she'll interrupt adults, she'll join in with the adults talk, she will take control of a situation, but that's her masking what's going on inside. So the experience of extreme emotions and change of mood, literally, and I will show you in a moment, goes from so low to completely high in a matter of seconds. And quite often these individuals may take on a persona of others, and that could be through role play, pretense, or fantasy. And with Amelie, and she will say this, she is quite obsessed with technology, and she loves watching YouTubers, and quite often she will take on the persona of different individuals that she sees. So hence the reason she was quite excited when I told her we were putting together a podcast. Can you imagine it? So let's move on to the next slide now. and have a look at the demand avoidance. As humans, we all do it, don't we? We naturally avoid certain demands for various reasons. I mean, I think, you know, we can all think of the, you know, that the time that, for example, for myself, not wanting to do any exercise, you put obstacles in the place. Oh, I can't do that today. It's raining. I can't possibly go out today and do a run or whatever it may be. And that's hard because it's linked to the physical and mental health and developmental or personality condition, and it's important to consider the demands within a demand. So, for example, if I said I'm not going out to do some exercise today because it's raining, the other demand, well, if I get wet, how is that going to make me feel? And I think how that's going to disrupt the rest of my day if I get wet, and so on and so on. And that's for somebody with PDA, that's extreme, and it's constant from the minute they get up throughout the day, and you can imagine how exhausting that must feel. So if we move on now to the next slide and talking about the impact, and this is exactly what we talked about just a moment ago, from how we can go from very sort of calm and able to complete panic and the flight and freeze mode within a few seconds. So if we can just click on Amelie here, Stacey, just to hear her point of view for this. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And just to let everybody know that if you can't hear it, not to worry. We have this session as a bite size on our YouTube channel. We'll send that link out to you. So we'll play this link, and then I think we may need to move on to our next speaker, Ange, if that's okay with you.
Of course, yes, not a problem. And I think that really says it all for somebody with PDA. It is literally like that. And I love the way Amelie is able to describe how the PDA impacts her, literally from being calm and excited to exactly how she's shown you there. And I love Amelie to bits, and I think she's a trooper to be able to put this together and talk about herself. So like Stacey said, there are additional slides, but I understand we're a little bit pushed for time, so that the YouTube clip will be put in so that you can all listen to it and really listen to it from Amelie's point of view. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Ange. It was so interesting, and I think it's really whet everybody's appetite. I think everybody wants to know more. So I think that indication and that sort of direction towards that YouTube video will be really, really important. So thank you for that. We're now inviting Ullswater Community College. So Mrs. McCormick, can you unmute yourself, please?
Oh, hello.
Thank you so much. Morning.
That's great. I've got two rather nervous students here, but very excited, and I'm sure they're going to do a super job with their presentation.
Thank you so much for joining us, and over to you. And please use me as your glamorous assistant to move the slides on. Is that all right?
Yeah,
just say move it on, Stace, and I just will. Okay.
Yeah. If I could just introduce the students, we have Halima and we have Kofi, and they are two Year 12 early years students in their just about to complete their first year. Okay.
Yep. So this is a poem we made up between us both, which basically just symbolises our opinions on SEND needs.
One of the first things we learnt was what a disability is, and discussed how it isn't just children with physical disabilities.
The most important thing is to celebrate SEND so that children feel valued and understood. Learning that inclusion is the golden thread through all of our learning and units. Learning that SEND isn't all about using a wheelchair. Understanding a holistic approach, gathering information from observations and the families, and the voice of the child is vital.
And I think one of the key things that we've been learning about is actually we think about children in a wheelchair, and that's quite rare, isn't it, girls? That's actually a rare thing to see. Actually, the variety of special and additional needs is what we've been learning about, and the students are absolutely right. That inclusion is that golden thread throughout every single unit that we've been learning about. Just in the same way that safeguarding is as well. I guess it's that constant theme throughout. So you get that holistic view of each unit and the course as a whole.
When identifying in our placement with a child with the SEND needs, the first thing to do is get information from the parent, listen to the child's wishes and their voice, then do a longitudinal study of their observations, and then taking all that information to the SENCO.
Early intervention is key for providing support before delays are seen in the development.
When we started placement, we were very nervous. There was a lack of confidence, understand how to recognise concerns, but we've learnt to be confident when observing children. We also worried about working with parents and their response, as sometimes they can be in denial or not understand the additional need of their child, so not really want to listen.
And I think that was a huge thing you said, wasn't it, that a huge part of that first going into placement was the lack of confidence in working with parents. And we have lots of discussions when the students have been on placement. We always start with a bit of a reflective session. What's happened this week? You know, who wants to share examples of practice? And that's often definitely a theme initially, is that the learners think, oh my goodness, you know, I'm not an expert. I don't even know about special needs or what that means. So it's been very much about reflecting on that, and a big theme that came out was, well, actually, how do you talk to parents about these issues? And you know that they know their child best, and perhaps I haven't got all of the information. So I think it's very much about developing confidence and remembering that, well, who knows their child best? Parents, absolutely.
It's important to recognise unique needs. For example, in my setting, a child with cochlear implants would find that loud noises can be triggering. Our setting uses Mcarthur to communicate with the children easier and make them feel involved.
Learned about difference, what some disabilities such as Down syndrome and cerebral palsy. A lot of the practitioners do research and also go on courses.
So you didn't quite know what the role of a SENCO was either. You hadn't heard that term. And as you said at the beginning of the slides, actually understanding some of the terminology is quite a big deal. And I think we worry about getting things wrong or saying the wrong thing. So part of that learning is about actually understanding some of these roles and breaking down those barriers and not being frightened to say, I'm not sure what that means. Or if you're worried about getting it wrong, ask the question. And then hopefully that addresses some of those misconceptions or ideas about worrying about getting things absolutely right.
Understanding what a SENCO is. They're a qualified teacher who has extra knowledge about SEND. In my setting, the manager is SENCO and provides support to practitioners.
The role of the key worker, they celebrate the children and also look at the positives as well as the negatives, so the parents and child don't feel disheartened.
Yeah, and that was a big part, wasn't it, in placement? One of the things you said to me was actually they look at what can the child do. We're looking at the strengths and celebrating those. We're not focusing on what they can't do, more what are the needs and how we can support those needs at the right time. Yeah.
Independence is key. So although we might want to always step in, it benefits the child when they have to face a challenge by themselves and really encourage themselves to get through it.
Yeah, so we were saying here, what do you tend to want to do for children?
Get involved,
yeah,
and help them,
and do it for them, don't you? And what have we learned we have to do?
Just step back and let them learn for themselves, or they'll never learn.
Yeah, so encourage them, yeah, and maybe scaffold and give them the right support. Yeah.
Skills needed when recognising SEND is taking it slowly with the child by ensuring the child doesn't feel overwhelmed and getting down to their level.
Observing the child, this can sometimes be a longitudinal study. This needs to be coherent and unbiased.
Being flexible by putting the child's needs first.
Consistently using strategies to support the child's development.
Being positive supports the child's well-being.
Willing to learn, being involved in courses and research, also talking to the team around you and parents.
Understanding the reasons why it's important to be calm when dealing with SEND.
And this is our final message. We need all children to reach for the stars. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That was amazing. Well done.
It really was. Thank you so much. And I know how difficult it is to come on screen and to talk and to worry that you're getting it right. So well done. I've really enjoyed that, and it was a really lovely message at the end as well that I think is going to be a message that is throughout today's session, and that is from employers, and it's from people that have been working in the sector for a very, very long time. So it fills me with lots of confidence that our next generation of early years educators are at this standard.
Thank you very much.
Here, Stacey. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, can I just check in with everybody? Is everybody okay? Is everybody able to see the slides? Please do keep interacting with us in the chat box. We have now got our next speaker or speakers. And apologies for not having Emma's name on here, but I know Emma is with us as well today. So I'm going to pass over to Natalie Shell, who I'm sure will introduce herself, but this is all about our employer voice. So you'll have lots to take away from this talk as well. So over to you, Nat and Emma.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll just wait for our slides to come up, but I'm the head teacher at Low Hill Nursery School, and also I'm Emma and I'm the Senko here as well. So we're going to be talking about inclusion and the graduated approach and how we have developed an approach within our school. So next slide, please. So just to tell you a little bit about the context of our school. So we're an outstanding nursery school in Wolverhampton. We have got over 200 children and families, so we're quite a large nursery setting. We do have children who are 2, 3, 4 and 5 years old. So we've got an SEN inclusive provision with 12 spaces. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that, Emma.
Yeah, so this was established about 5 years ago now, and it's now gone up to 18 places as well. So these are for children with an EHCP in place, and they are obviously part of our school but have a separate kind of a provision available to them for parts of their day.
Yeah, so we also offer 30 hours where some of our children do access a full day's provision. Low Hill Nursery School is in an area of high deprivation, and we also have lots of other factors and other barriers, which is something to consider when you are starting work or you're going on a placement. What do I need to know about the school, and what do I need to know about the environment and the setting that the children are coming from? Next slide, please. So what do we offer at Low Hill Nursery School? So a warm welcome. So for us, everybody is welcome within our school, and that kind of goes from the wider community, parents, staff. Regardless of what you may feel your barriers are, you will be welcome here. There's no judgment. And we also have staff who are passionate about the care of the children, but also the wider family. We've got a pastoral role which has expanded through the pandemic, as you can probably imagine. Emma, do you want to talk about our strong links?
Yeah, so we're talking about graduate approach here, and external agencies form part of that process. So having those strong links with the other agencies that can support the children in your setting is really crucial, because then it just helps to kind of get that support that they need as early as possible. But we'll talk about that a bit more as part of that process.
So we have support for students from a range of providers, and that means that we actually have students who are on placement who do have their own EHCP. And as you can see from the side, there's lots of things that we do offer. Next slide, please. So for us, we have been on a journey when we think about inclusion and actually what does that mean. And to us, it's about that we want to ensure that regardless of a child's perceived barriers, that they're given the chance for success. All children deserve to achieve success. And you know, when we look at these photographs of these children, some of these children, you wouldn't know that this child has got this diagnosis, this label attached to them, because we see, first and foremost, we see the children as children and really celebrate what they can do. So for me, a question when you're going into a placement or to a job role, what can the child already do? What is this child good at? And this will relay as well to staff. What are my staff's strengths? And I think you can really see from the pictures that the children, they're happy, they're engaged, and they're problem solving, and they're creating worlds of their own. I mean, we've got children in these pictures, they can't verbally communicate, but we have supported and scaffolded them to find ways of working with one another, which is something, it doesn't happen overnight, but we're really, really proud of what we were able to achieve.
It's the universal offer there that is so open-ended that it supports a high number of needs without really having to do much additional adaptations to the provision.
Yeah, so next slide, please. So, oh, have we missed some of the photographs? Has it skipped too far, Stacey? No, I don't know. Sorry, go back. We did have some more photographs of the children, I'm not sure, but just the next one, sorry.
Sorry, I'm not being a great assistant here. Here we go.
All right. So we will talk about a little bit more about our student placement. So we developed some really close links with the City of Wolverhampton College, and you know, a lady came to us and she said, you know, I've heard about your school. Do you think you could support a student? She wants to work in childcare, she wants to work in early years, but nobody else would take her. And we were, you know, kind of disgusted really by this attitude, because we just feel that everybody deserves a chance. And, you know, sometimes we need to just look at what are the perceived barriers to somebody not being able to achieve what they want to. But it's about those realistic expectations. But again, we want people to have that opportunity to experience success. And for us, our bespoke approach extends to students as well, depending on the need, but we will work really closely and ensure that we're supporting, like the EHCP process, for people wanting to work in early years. So next slide, please. So I will hand over to Emma to speak more about this, because I know that this is something that Emma is passionate about and has got a lot of knowledge. Thank you.
So the graduated approach is a 4-stage process that's outlined within the SEND Code of Practice. So it outlines what school settings need to do in a legal requirement, basically. So the 4 stages are assess, plan, do and review. So what you would be doing is having those early kind of observations and conversations with families, parents, to get to know the children. Here at Low Hill, we offer a stay and play as well for children before they're at the age where they can join us. So we're getting those opportunities to kind of learn about the families and the children and parents who know their children very best of all. So for us, the first part of that is the universal offer, which you've seen some of our photographs that show that we use a open-ended approach here at school, and that through that open-ended approach, all children, whatever kind of stage they're at, can all access something from the activity. So whichever activity we are offering in school, we're always mindful that children are, and within early years, this is always key. Everyone's on their own kind of individual developmental journey. So and the first layer of the graduated approach is obviously that children will come to us, they will access our universal offer, and then we will be looking at seeing which children need something that little bit extra. And if children are not making the progress we would expect from that universal offer, we would then look at a targeted approach, which would then be where the plan comes into place. So the assessment comes first, and then we can plan some additional targeted work that we can offer for our children. And here at Low Hill, we have lots and lots and lots of things that we offer as a targeted approach that can kind of cater towards language. And this is where our agencies come in, because we have kind of using funding that we get for children to provide our own level of agency support that's in-house, so play therapist, speech and language therapist, and educational psychology services as well. So they're already in our school available before we get to that specialist stage of needing those referrals. So the graduated approach is required in order to be able to access some of these external services that we might need for children. But first we would start with a plan that would outline the strengths of the child, what they can do. It's from the child's voice perspective. So they're saying, you know, what I can do really well, how other people can help me, and what we would like them to be able to achieve next, that they kind of where they're at the moment and where they can go next. And this is reviewed, which is the third stage of the process, to see how the progress is going and to see if they're making the expected kind of progress towards what we would like them to be. Are they closing that attainment gap, you know, related to what we're seeing inside our school, but also national data as well, what we would be expecting. And we use the EYFS curriculum in lines to see if they are on track and are they on their way to closing that to be within their what we would expect for their age. And then when we've done 2 cycles of this approach, we can then obviously we've reviewed it, and then we are following out the actions that we want to put in. And then when we've done a couple of cycles, if we feel that we need specialist agency approach, then that's when we can make those referrals. But throughout the whole process, it's what parents want, it's what parents feel, because they know their child best, and sometimes it's about supporting them as well on their journey of acceptance that their child may need something a little bit different and additional to a universal approach. Again, early intervention is really key, so we try and do what we can in terms of home visits before children start. That transition process starts, you know, before they come to us. They won't have maybe been anywhere else, and we'll be the first port of call to be kind of having these conversations. And they, as the ladies earlier on, the college students did say, this is a difficult conversation sometimes to have with parents. You could be the first person who is actually sharing with them that maybe their child needs additional support. So all of this is kind of crucial, really. And then finally, the Ehcp Pathway. This is where your specialist agencies are a really important part of this, because education psychology will be doing their own assessments to see whether this child, when they leave the early years setting, are going to need further support within their education in primary, whether a mainstream school is appropriate or something more specialist. And that's where their intervention is really key in that process. And when they do say that maybe this is something that needs to be looked at, then that's when my role is to kind of make applications towards an assessment for an EHCP. And yeah, parents and partners in everything, because nothing is done without parents' kind of approval, really, and that they want to be part of that process from beginning to end, really. And yeah, I'll be available at the end if anyone has any more questions about the graduated approach from our point of view. So thank you very much.
So next slide. So just to kind of mirror what the girls were saying from the college about don't, and this is one of my all-time favourite quotes, and it really reflects what we believe at Low Hill Nursery School. So don't tell me the sky's the limit when there are footprints on the moon. So that's just saying, you know, keep going. Doesn't, you know, there is no limit. And for us, that is something that we strongly believe in. Just because a child, you know, can't communicate through speech doesn't mean that they haven't got a voice. And, you know, we fight really hard to be the advocates for these children. And I think moving forward, you know, we're in a really powerful position. And, you know, the educators of tomorrow, you're in a really powerful position. But thank you for listening to us today, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. That was so informative, and I loved seeing the photos as well of the children actually engaged and interacting. And I have had the pleasure of seeing Low Hill Nursery School in real life, in practice, and it's exactly as you've explained, and that quote that you shared at the end, I think, is also beautiful, and I've heard you say many times to staff, children, parents, and me. So it's really lovely to have you both here. I just wanted to pick up on one question, just in case our students were having a think about it. And Janet has provided the EHCP acronym in the chat box for us, but also could you explain what pastoral care means and what that pastoral role entails?
So for us at Lower Hill Nursery School, we believe in not only the academic and the development side of the child, but also in terms of the mental health and well-being. So what is going on for that family? So for me, I don't believe in attendance awards, because there's lots of reasons why that child may be late for school, or actually let's celebrate that that child has got to school today rather than them punishing them for being 10 minutes late. So a pastoral role is around, for us, supporting the family as a whole. It may be providing opportunities for somebody to talk to. It may be looking at how can we support the family, and also it links in with the safeguarding side. So within our school we have the designated safeguarding lead, and also she works within the pastoral team. But through the pandemic, obviously we know how difficult it was for families, and it kind of raised lots of different issues, especially within the community where we are working. The pastoral support practitioner, she may help families with disability applications for funding for children. It's quite a wide-ranging role and a really interesting role as well, which some of the students may be interested in, you know, going further into that. But it's about the support for the whole family, and if any of the students are interested, we'd be more than happy to talk in more detail about that. I hope that answers the question, Stacey.
It absolutely does. Thank you. And I'm sure we will be inviting you back to talk about those roles as well, because I think, as you said, it might be something that the students aspire to become. We have got some questions coming up, but we will answer them towards the end. And I think the funding question has just been answered by yourself anyway, Nat. So thank you again for joining us. And we are now swiftly moving on to our next speaker, who is Matt Mcarthur. Are you here, Matt? Yes, you are.
Yes. Can you see me? All right.
We can see you and we can hear you clearly. So I'm going to pass over to you. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
No worries. Hopefully you can see my slides. Can you? I press
we
play.
Can.
Oops, Daisy. Oh, there we go. Play slide two. There we go. I can't see you. I can't see the chat either. So if any questions do come up as we go, I think I've got about 20 minutes, and my hope is to talk to you a little bit about the school that I work at, and then some other additional information that you might find useful, whether you are a student or whether you are currently working in a school or in a college. So my name is Matt Mcarthur. I work at Frankwise Special School in Banbury. Frankwise School has a population of about 120 children and young people. The youngest is age 2 in our assessment nursery, and we go all the way through to up to 19 in our post-16 provision. I am a class teacher. I work in the year 5 and year 6 class on a Tuesday. And I am also assistant head teacher here. I work across Oxfordshire as a system leader, so I go into schools and support schools and colleges with their SEND provision, and I also do an awful lot of teacher training and working with early career teachers. And I also work for an organisation called Whole School SEND 1 day a week as part of their regional team, supporting schools and colleges with their send CPD. So this is very much in my wheelhouse, really, to coming and talking to people about their SEND provision and actually how they might want to develop themselves in order to better meet the needs of the children and young people that they are serving. So I thought I'd just start with how I kind of got into the field of working in a special school. There's an awful lot of mystique about special schools sometimes, and sometimes that you can kind of feel that they're a world that they're quite difficult to break into. But when I was a kid, when I was doing my A-levels, I had no intention of going into teaching. I had no real understanding or concept of special needs. You may be in a different position. You may well have friends or siblings or family members or whatever who have got special needs. Sometimes pretty mild, sometimes more complex. But when I was kind of thinking about what I wanted to do in life, really this wasn't on my radar at all. It was completely by accident. I went to university. I got my degree, and came back to Banbury after kind of dropping off the education belt, so to speak, and thought, well, I might try and teach abroad. I might try and maybe try and get some experience in a local school to support some applications. And the only school that got back to me was my local special school. And a friend of mine had said that she'd had a really positive experience there. And so I started at my current school 17 years ago as a lunchtime supervisor, basically coming in at lunchtime and supporting the children and young people to eat, to go to the toilet and to play. I found that it was absolutely addictive. These children and young people, there was something about working alongside such complex learners in a special school environment that was really exciting, and I felt an awful lot of I got a lot of feedback from that. It was something that I was clearly enjoying, and so I was offered a post as a classroom assistant. I continued to develop my understanding of special needs. I got to know the school even better, working kind of 9 to 3, and then they also offered me a training contract to become a teacher. So I did a work-based route training in the school for a year and got my QTS. And then they offered me a job, and I've been here ever since. And I would never have seen that as a trajectory for myself. It was completely not on the cards. In fact, I had two real ambitions at school. One was to escape my hometown, because who wants to spend the rest of their life in their own hometown? And secondly was never to go into teaching. And I failed spectacularly in both of those ambitions, really. And I guess there was something about working in a special school that was that felt very, very different. It was very different to working in a usual school. My experience of a usual school, and I think what it boiled down to was that central core purpose of what a special school does. Often in mainstream, my experience of mainstream was that it was all about getting academic results. But actually the school that I currently work at, Frank High School, we have a very clear moral purpose, a really clear sense, a really strong culture of what we're trying to achieve for our children and young people. So all the children and young people that we have in our school have got education healthcare plans. You have to have an education healthcare plan to come into a special school. And they're all children whose needs are better catered for in this sort of environment than in a mainstream setting. But that doesn't mean we're not ambitious for them. We don't teach towards academic outcomes, but we do seek to educate, motivate and celebrate them by providing the best possible education. And I think that's how we've decided to arrange our classes. That's how we've decided to arrange our curriculum, which I'll go into in a bit more detail. But this particular purpose, these words, the shared purpose is what drives our decision making as a school. And I think that was also what I was responding to when I was initially kind of going and spending time at the school. There was a sense of real purpose that what we were seeking to do was to get the best outcomes for these children, for these young people, whatever they may be, whatever aspect of life we were talking about. How do we get the best outcomes for them? And so, yeah, this moral foundation that we have as a school, the beliefs that we have about what we do as a school and why, are really encapsulated by this sort of language. And again, I don't know what your thoughts are around special school, whether you've ever spent time in a special school, whether you've considered spending time in a special school. But what you find is that the bottom line in special schools should always be about how are we preparing our children and young people for life outside of school and beyond school. And that isn't always done in academic ways. That might be about independent travel, that might be about routes to employability, it might be about access to the community, it might be about finding, about having the self-advocacy to find reasonable and useful occupation or interests. So yeah, it's great because our bottom line is about creating people who go into the world confident and with purpose and with a clear sense of direction, with all the skills they need then to navigate that world and to become active members in their community. And really, that is what that purpose is what drives really what we do and how we arrange ourselves as a special school. So I normally get lots of questions about how does a special school actually run? What does it look like? Well, at Pathway School, we've got classes of about 9. They are arranged by age rather than by diagnosis or ability. You sometimes find special schools have got like a formal, semi-formal, informal curriculum that kind of streams children depending on what their perceived outcomes might be down the line or the particular complexity of their needs. We don't do that. We don't choose to do it that way. We've chosen to arrange ourselves in this way, where we actually have children arranged by age, because we feel that learning to learn in community with each other, with children of their own age, actually prepares them better for being active participators outside of life and beyond, outside of school and in the communities that they then belong. They learn to value the interactions they have with a whole range of different other children as they're going through school, rather than just children of similar types of need. So So if you kind of walk through our school, you would see classes of children of the same sort of age. Very mixed ability, very broad ability, children working at very early developmental stages, learning alongside children, who are developmentally much further along that path. And our curriculum is, so it's kind of arranged like a primary school. So you've got a class teacher and various support staff. Usually 3 support staff in a class with a group of 9 children, and you would stay with that group for the whole year and you would teach all lessons to that class. So a bit like a primary school teacher with a TA would teach for the whole class for the whole year. We arrange ourselves in the same way, all the way from age 2 up to 19. Really.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Matt. Sorry to interrupt you, Matt, because I'm so engaged and I'm so interested in what you've got to say, but we're not seeing your slides.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I just wanted to, because I know you can't see us at the moment and you can't see the chat either. So it's just in case that anybody wanted to follow along with you, really. They're moving when you click on them.
But then they're dipping out.
Okay. Yeah. So we could just see the initial slide, your holding slide at the start. But everything you're saying is lovely. So I didn't want to interrupt you, but I know that some of our learners will want to see.
It's probably, if you want to see pictures, just go onto our website, the Pathway School website. You'll see lots of lovely pictures that will kind of illustrate what I'm trying to say. And you'll also find lots of other information on there.
Thank you.
But yeah, we teach just a bit about our curriculum. We teach the full range of subjects: history, geography, MFL, RE. That's how we've chosen to be. But I would really, I'm conscious of the time, I really want to encourage you, if you get the opportunity to have a placement in a special school or to go and visit a special school, then do so. We are a diverse community, serving a diverse community. So people either stay an awful long time, like I do, you kind of fall into it and 17 years later you're still there, or they stay for a short time, so that you kind of come into this sort of field, you get that experience, but then you think, well, actually, no, the teaching route isn't maybe quite for me, but maybe I want to become a physiotherapist or speech and language therapist, an occupational therapist, or some other sort of therapist, or go into social care. And so we have a lot of people who come to Frank Wise School straight from sixth form, straight from college. They might do some work experience with us. They may stay, but actually they may see that as a springboard into other careers. And experience working in a special school, working in your local special school, can look really attractive to universities and to further education providers, particularly for those sorts of courses like speech language therapy or child psychology, physiotherapy, where there is a lot of competition for a very few number of courses. So yeah, I would really recommend taking the time to do that. I'm sorry that you can't see my slides, but one thing that I kind of want to, just in the last 5 minutes, talk about a few resources that I think would be really really good. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to try and open it again to come to, hopefully you can see that. The condition-specific videos. So
we can, Matt, thank you. We can.
So there is a link at the bottom there. If you are at all interested in finding out more about working with children with special needs, and you just want some very short, sharp input on particular conditions, I really recommend that you take a look at this on the Whole School SEND website. So they are, there's a suite of training videos. They're about 10 minutes long each. And they're created to provide really helpful pointers and techniques and advice on strategies to support people who have got different special educational needs. So if you find yourself working in a setting with children with ADHD, you might watch the video on ADHD, about 10 minutes long, or you might, if you're working with a child with a physical disability, or an adult, a young person, an adult with a physical disability, you might want to watch that video, or there's ones on autism, acquired brain injury, speech, language and communication. And again, you can watch all these for free on the Whole School SEND website, and you can just follow that link there. The next one I want to just draw your attention to, which I think you'd find helpful to see, would be the one on the SEND development pathway, which again, hopefully you can see there. Again, this is all free. This is something you can access, and the aim of this this pathway is that to ensure that everyone can access really high quality SEND professional support. So whatever your role, whether you are in school as doing a work experience placement, or you are looking for a teaching assistant post, or you're working in a different setting and you're wanting to develop your expertise in some way, you can basically find your current role and the role you're wanting to move into, and by using this interactive tool on the Whole School SEND website, you can find a range of resources, usually free resources, and links to CPD that will develop your expertise in that way. So on the left-hand side there, you can see the entry point. So if you've literally not got any experience working with children with SEND, that might be your entry point, and you might want to explore the stations around becoming a teaching assistant. If you are a teacher and you want to become a specialist teacher, you might want to develop. You might want to kind of click on those stations. It's set out supposedly like a railway train station. So you basically get a ticket that is generated by clicking on different links. And I think I can show you one of them. Open tray. There we go. And play. Yeah, so you can see there if you're currently a teaching assistant, you can see there in the green left-hand side, teaching assistant, and actually you wanted to develop your expertise and become a specialist teaching assistant. Then actually, therefore, by creating this ticket, by using that interactive tool, you then have this list of courses which they're all labelled there in black, which means they're all free. If they were in red, it means that you might have to pay for them, but they're still really high quality. But very few, most of the stuff on here is free. And again, it gives you a sense of how long the learning time is, and gives you connections to either qualifications that you might want to take, or other national frameworks that you might find interesting. So again, a really, really useful resource. And again, the links, send the links out to you. And if you're working in a college in particular at the moment, and you're thinking that looks really exciting, that's going to really help with our CPD, I would also draw your attention to the College Send Review Guide, which is more aimed at college leaders. It's something that's been developed with schools, with colleges, with teachers, with pupils, with families, and a range of other kind of college organisations to create a guide that allows you to review your college's approach to inclusion, like the leadership or the learner experience, and then to use that self-evaluation, that information that can feed into your self-assessment review, your quality improvement plans, but also a really useful framework for peer review. And peer review can be a really valuable part of a college's quality process. Again, you can download that for free from the Whole School Send website, and the link is provided at the bottom there of the slide. So that was, I hope that was okay. That was a bit of a whistle-stop tour of what it is to work in a special school, how I kind of got into it, where that's led me, where it might lead you, and hopefully some useful resources that you might want to explore in your own time.
Thank you, Matt. I've learnt so much there, and I've been scribbling notes down, ready to explore all of those links. It was a wonderful presentation and really, really useful and inspiring, I think, because to hear your journey at the start was a real highlight for me. So thank you, and thank you so much for joining us and taking that spot and taking up this space to speak about all of those wonderful things that you're working on.
No worries. I'll pop my email in the chat in case anybody wants to get in contact with me afterwards.
All that's dangerous. I'll be using that. Thank you. So Angie and Janet, we're all going to come on camera now, and I am going to reshare and pass over to Angie Rogers. I'm going to mute myself.
Stace, do you want to mute yourself when you've finished giving us instructions?
I did notice I just muted myself and just carried on talking. Right, I can't even remember what I was saying now, so don't worry. It wasn't important. I was just chatting away to myself. Right, over to Ange.
Hi, are we moving on to deaf awareness, Stacey? So if we could just go to that first slide, that would be great.
We're there. Can you see it?
Not on my screen. It hasn't popped up. Don't know whether we're sharing.
Can you see it, Janet?
I was going to say I can see it. It might be worth just resharing. But
you can.
Have you got it now, Anne? Brilliant.
It's just a little bit slow.
Technology, don't we love it? We love it.
Here we are.
Maybe that's the theme of our next conference. What do you reckon?
Yes, this is the
I think so. And if Emma's on the call, Emma, this is why we need you.
Well, yeah, thank you once again, Matt, for that. I was truly inspired, and I straight away was on the website looking. And for those that couldn't see the slides or couldn't see the pictures, please do go. And I've put the website link in the chat as well, because I think he's got so much to offer there, and particularly with those different CPD. So thank you for that, Matt. That was absolutely great. So this really that we've put in here is just looking at Deaf Awareness Week, which was obviously just last week, and the focus for this year was all about inclusion, which sort of fitted in really well with what we were doing today. And I think it's really important for us to identify that these awareness weeks and days that we have. And as many of you know, it's Mental Health Week at the moment, with a particular focus on loneliness. So before we start this, I just want those to reach out, everybody. If you know somebody, or you know that you yourself, you know, reach out for those and everybody around, because I think it's really important that, you know, mental health is one of those that is hidden, and we need to be able to talk about it, share it, and really comfort one another and offer that support. So I just wanted to put that out there. So last week, as I say, we really focused on the deaf awareness and inclusion, and we ourselves had a team meeting to sort of really highlight it. We know so many, and many of you will know children and young people and adults that are deaf, and the consideration that needs to be given to this community. So as I said, the focus was on inclusion, and it was about creating an inclusive approach within, not just in education, but in the workplace, within the health settings, and within the community. And you know, I looked at different clips, and there was one particular one from a doctor who's deaf herself, and she was expressing how she works with her patients in a way with this. She signs and she uses other forms of communication, and it's been really positive feedback that she's had from her patients that say that they really feel that connection, and having somebody themselves who is deaf that can communicate in a way that's positive, I think is amazing, appropriate, inclusive. And maybe this is what we should be doing in the workplace. And as we move further through the slides in a moment, you will see that we have got a little clip, and it's a wonderful how schools can just by simply just take on this inclusion and really sort of think about their practice and the simple steps that they can take. So I wanted us to take a little time to reflect on how it might feel to be deaf. Now, you know, I've worked with many children in schools and nurseries that have been deaf, and I think, you know, quite often, you know, it's that they can be misunderstood. And it's how we communicate with them that is absolutely key. And one of the areas, particularly with the child that I worked with, was the issues around the environment and the simple changes that we can make to the environment. For example, the noise level in different areas of the classroom where we sit that child, the echo, the hall going into assembly. And one day when I said to this child, are you okay with this? And she just turned around to me and said, yeah, I'm okay. I'm used to it. But that's not the response that I wanted. And it broke my heart to feel that she felt like that, and that every day that she was up against that. So we had to make changes. We have to make changes. So if we move on to the next slide, Stacey, this just looks at really simple ways in which we can do this, some top tips here. So to ensure that we've got that inclusive practice, make sure that you have their attention. Ensure that the room is well lit. You know, lighting makes a huge difference for order that people can see us and see our face. And learn some basic sign language. That's important. That's our another language that is absolutely key. Face the person, making that eye contact is absolutely key. Check that they understand you, because quite often, you know, we have spoken, and, you know, with this child in particular, they'll sit there and she'll nod, but has she really understood? So that's really important. Please don't shout at individuals that are deaf. You know, it doesn't matter if you shout through a megaphone, it's not going to make any difference, and it's rude, you know, so we need to, you know, really consider that. And try not to use too technical language, because that just confuses the situation. And making sure that we're aware of how many people are speaking at once is absolutely key. So it's just simple. You probably all know those, but it's just highlighting that, isn't it? So if we move on to our next slide now, there's just a few common little myths here. myth one, deaf people can't enjoy music. Well, absolutely not. And deaf people can hear music, but they have their own unique way of enjoying that music. It could be through reading that music. It could be through writing that music, visuals, or their own culture. And sound is just one aspect of music. So that is obviously a complete myth. Myth two, deaf people can't be frontline professionals. And this is what I was talking about earlier with the doctor. You know, there are a wide range of deaf professionals, and it can be really beneficial to use that alternative communication, not just to support others that are deaf, but also to support those whose English is their additional language, for example, refugees and others that are settling in Britain. So it's about using different forms of communication. And the last myth, there are plenty, but the last myth that I've put on here is deaf people can't dance. Well, hang on a minute. Can we just say Strictly Come Dancing here and Rose Ayling-Ellis and Giovanni winning the BAFTA? How amazing was that? And that just highlights, you know, that sense, that music and dance, and how wonderful. And every time I talk about it, I go goosebumpily because I just can't, you know, it's absolutely well done to both of them for that impactful dance with no music. How amazing. So moving forward onto the next slide, we sort of have a look at new policies, and I think it's important that things are changing for the deaf community in positive ways, and it's looking about reforming and recognizing British Sign Language as a language. So key. So this bill is really highlighting the importance of the sign language and ways we can promote it and facilitate it. And I know for sure, and it was on the BBC just last week, there is one school in Wales that has taken this really forward, where instead of choosing a language such as French or Spanish in their school, they have chosen British Sign Language as the language that they will teach in schools. And if you get a chance to watch that clip with that school in Wales, and I will find it and obviously send it out, but it absolutely amazing, and how the whole school approach to British Sign Language and how that supports every child, not just those that are deaf, and it will go forward into their future lives. Amazing. So watch out for the change. And then moving on to our next slide is challenge yourself, guys. Challenge yourself. You know, take that step. Many of you probably can. I heard that some of the girls do Mcarthur, and that's absolutely fantastic. You know, simple sign language, depending on the needs of the child. You know, from those with Down syndrome to those with autism, it can be across the board, and to support those that, you know, the refugee children. You know, it can be used in many different forms. So challenge yourselves. So I wanted to say good morning to you all and thank you, everyone, because we love you. It's been great. It really has. So moving on to that last slide. This just talks about how many. This is just a few facts here, about 87,000 British. We're gonna rise that. We're gonna make that level rise for sure, because I think it is. It's gonna grow for sure. So make that your challenge. And I think there's a few little other did you knows in there as well, Stacey. I don't know whether you put those in there. This is just one. I don't know how many of you remember the Smurfs, or whether the Smurfs are still around, who knows. But this was way back, that the Smurfs was the first animated show to have a character to use sign language. They introduced this character, Laconia, and although she used sign language, there was a bit of a debate as to whether she was deaf or mute, but hey, she used sign language, and she encouraged all the other Smurfs to sign, as well as the viewers to sign. So this was absolutely revolutionary at its time. So well done, the Smurfs there. Fantastic. So moving on to our last one, I think this is the one with the media clip in, and this is such a heartwarming clip that really shows how achievable inclusion is. So I don't know whether, are we going to just put that out there or watch it now, Stace?
I've popped it in the chat box for people to watch in their own time so that they, you know, we don't have any technical issues and they can go away and watch it.
Brilliant.
So that'll be
Thank
quite
you.
nice. And just to add to the Smurfs, I think now we have Mr. Tumble as well, don't we, on CBeebies. And also Rose has just been asked to do bedtime stories on CBBC as well, which is lovely. You know, she'll be a recurring guest, I reckon.
We'll get her next time, guys.
Oh.
Thank you for listening. A few useful links added on there, so please do check those out.
Thanks, Ange. Yeah, really, all really interesting. And you will have these links, so not to worry about scribbling them down or trying to copy and paste them, which doesn't work. We are now going to pass over to another colleague who I believe is with us. Jill, are you there?
Yes, hello Stacey. Yes, I'm here.
Hello, you okay?
Yes, I'm good. Thank you. I've really enjoyed listening in. I thought that Matt's presentation was brilliant, and certainly I'm going to have a look at the resources that he circulated on there as well. I think it'll be really useful to look at that. And also, Angie, thank you around the Deaf Awareness Week as well. So what I would like to do, so I hope you're enjoying today's conference, and there's certainly been some useful information and experiences shared. I'll just put my camera on just to see, so you can put a face to a name or a name to a voice, etc. So my name is Jill Childs, so I may well have spoken to some of you over the duration of, certainly with the T-levels. I'm quite heavily into the development of the T-levels. So I'm the systems trainer here at NCFE within the content team. And we've been producing the learning resources to support the delivery of the T-levels. And that's across the education and childcare, health, healthcare science and digital. So that's mainly what our focus has been on at the moment, and certainly looking at the accessibility features that we could bring into those qualifications to help both with the delivery of it and as well from the student point of view as well. So if we could have the next slide, please. Thank you. I hope you can all see those slides all right. So as today's conference is looking at the needs of SEND learners, I would like to share with you what we have done to improve and embed accessibility features into our resources, and ask from a student and tutor perspective, are you aware of the accessible features that we have built into our T-level resources? So the e-learning slides have been designed to be as accessible as we can within the limitations of the software. So the software that we produce the e-learning in has various accessibility features built into that. And we try to use that as much as possible. So by using the accessibility elements within the software, this allows the user to be able to adjust the background screen colours. So we've got a range of different colours there. Now that's useful for both if the tutor is projecting this through a screen, or if your students are using it as self-paced learning as well. So you've got that option of being able to take away the brightness of that white background colour. So you can also navigate through the sessions using keyboard strokes. So again, if you can't use the mouse, then you're able to be able to use the keyboard strokes by using Tab, Enter, and the up and arrow keys and Command keys, and as well as obviously being able to use the mouse there as well. There's also, it'll be compatible with voice technology assist, and as well as screen readers as well. So again, if any of your students have that technology built into their desktops, then they'll be able to use the resources with the software that they've got. One thing that we do is that when we produce the slides, the text will only cover 2/3 of the screen. And this is to allow for a screen magnifier to enhance the text. So anybody with any visual issues, then you can enhance it using your screen magnifier, and that won't then affect the flow of the screen. So it's not as if you have to lose half of the sentence because you've enhanced it to such a degree. Because we're only putting it across 2/3 of the screen, it should work well with a magnification. And also our interactive PDFs, they can be used with voice recognition software as well as being compatible with keystrokes. So if we could have the next slide, please. Thank you. So that gives you an idea of what we currently do, but we're constantly reviewing the accessibility features that we've got built in, and it would be really useful for us to know what more we could do to improve the accessibility within these T-level resources. So I would like you, if possible, to use the chat facility to express any ideas that you may have. So this could be if there's anything that you would like to see or develop to either support tutors or students. As I've already said, this is what we've already done and what we've already built in. But is there anything else that we're missing? Is there anything that we should be considering when we're producing these resources? Is there any particular free software that you use for a particular resource? So if you've got students or you're a student yourself, is there a particular resource that you use? And that could be free, or alternatively, it could be something that you need to subscribe to as well. And is there a particular feature within that type of software that's really beneficial for either the tutor and or the students? So there might be something there that works really well if you're doing a particular activity and you use this particular software. So these are the sorts of things that we really need to know and we to investigate further to see if it's something that we could use and develop further as well. And again, if you've got any examples that you would like to share or resources that you have used or even resources that you may well have developed as well. So I'll just give you a couple of minutes for anybody that would like to put something into the chat. If you'd like to contribute to any ideas, your comments are valuable to us and will certainly be something that we'll be taking away to work on further. Like I say, we're going to certainly have a look more closely at the links that Matt put in. I think what they've done there is really good as well, so that there may well be some additional information on SEND resources that will be useful for us to know as well. So yes, so if you've got anything that you'd like for us to know further, then please pop into the chat. I'm just having a look to see if there's anything that's gone in at the moment.
Nothing at the moment, Jill, but so interesting, all of the things that you've already told us about. I think it's really informative when you know, sometimes you don't know those functions are there because you know, if you don't use it, you lose it, sort of thing. So it's really good that you've highlighted that we've got some things in place and you're working on things. So thank
exactly.
you for that.
We are aware that there's probably more out there that we should be doing, and we're aware of that. But ultimately, if we're not aware of what the need is and what students and or tutors need, then this is what we need to start to look at and develop as well. And yeah, so I'm just having a look there, and I don't think there's anything else. So so yeah, if you would like just to go on to the next slide, please. So again, so thank you for taking the time to listen to this. And like I said, there'll be further opportunity to comment about the accessibility features within the resources at the end of the session. And ultimately, if you'd like to know more about what we've developed and what we're and to contribute or to send me any examples that you might have outside of this chat, then please do. We would be more than happy to see what you're currently working with, how you're developing this, and what works well in your centres, etc. So I've put our email address there, so that's learningresources@ncfe.org.uk. So feel free to drop us a line, and then, like I say, we would be more than happy to speak to you further. So thank you for taking the time to listen to me, so yes, so enjoy the rest of the conference. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us, Jill.
Thank you for
as
having me.
always, really informative. And we've got the email address also in the chat box. So if you didn't catch it on the slide, then it is in the chat box for you as well. And if you have got any questions that perhaps you don't want to ask in a public forum like this one, then of course you can send those across to Learning Resources email, or to myself or Janet or Angie. We will pick those up as well.
Exactly. Yes, that's excellent. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'm just going to stop presenting for a second and ask for our speakers to just come back on camera for me. Janet, Angie, Matt, if you're still here, please do come back on. Mrs. McCormick, if you want to come back on with your students, please feel free. Emma, I know that you are still with us, so please do come back on. And we're just going to have a little bit of a conversation, I guess, and answer any of your questions. So if everybody can come back on camera, that would be wonderful. And if you have any questions in regards to special educational needs and disabilities, we will try our best to answer some of those whilst we're all together. So yeah, over to you really. And has anybody within our team got any questions either, but as well, because actually I've learnt so much today already, and I'm going to take quite a few little takeaways and things that I'm going to go and research a little bit further with me. So please share your reflections as well whilst we're waiting for some questions to come in.
I think absolutely, Stacey. Oh, sorry, Angie. I'll just quickly say, I know we're eager. I just quickly want to say a massive thank you, to everybody who's joined us today, and all of our guest speakers in particular. Now, being a teacher by trade, I know all three of us, internal colleagues that you can see with you today, are absolutely blown away by the students. The students will do it every time for us. So it's wonderful, absolutely wonderful, and very, very brave of you to come on to a student conference and to share your voice with us and to share your experience with us. So a big massive thank you, because I know that was it's something to really be thinking about and to really build up confidence. But you mean such a lot to us by doing that. It means an awful lot to your peers as well. It's truly inspirational, so well done. My question is going to come to you two then because of that. So that was me getting you ready. Okay, so here it comes. And it's just a question really about your experience, your knowledge of SEND, which is absolutely wonderful. Do you feel inspired when you listen to people like Matt talk about his journey? And do any of you have any sort of inclination to work with children with SEND? And how? Two questions. So brace yourself. That was question number one. Do you want to work with children with SEND as a kind of specialism? And the second question is, how do you feel about working with children with SEND within your settings? There we go. Tough ones. What do you think? Join in the conversation.
I think it can be hard to work with children with SEND because sometimes they're not verbal. So it can be hard to work out their needs and stuff. But it is very rewarding. But I want to be a social worker, so I guess you work with a range of children, and not just SEND children.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
About you, Halima?
Well, I'd like to work with children just as a whole, really.
Yeah, so all children.
Yeah.
And I think something we talk about in lessons is it's about confidence, and we often see a special or additional needs as something it's out of our comfort zone, so we're not sure how to deal with it. And I think certainly in your first year it's about developing that confidence, isn't it? And I'd say definitely from having our reflective conversations, it is about finding that journey and finding your confidence. But certainly we've got a few other peers who are interested in working with children with additional needs as well. And every time they come back to class, they've got a story to tell me, and they're making a connection between their learning and the little boy with a cochlear implant and various other needs of the children, and they're picking that up all the time and saying, oh yeah, actually we have this other little boy. And what about the slides this morning about the autism? And you said you'd heard the language before.
Yeah, in our setting, there's a lot of language about a suspected child who could have an additional need, but it is hard to get him tested and stuff. And it's definitely something that they look into, and you hear the language of PDA and stuff like that, it's an open conversation that we just, yeah.
So that was really interesting to hear that, and then for the students to make those links and say, oh yeah, I heard that, I heard one of the supervisors or one of the key people talking about that, so that made perfect sense. So it was really interesting. Yeah, really good.
Oh, that's absolutely great to hear. I'm really pleased about that, and please do check, because I know some people had real difficulty listening to Amelie, and she's got so much to say, and I love her to bits. So please do take the time to go onto our YouTube channel and listen to it, you know, in your own time, because and this goes back to what Janet was saying earlier, really, because we learn from the children, and don't ever feel that it's the other way around, because you know that's how we learn, and you will gain that confidence the more you work with individuals, and that's all children, but particularly those with SEND. It's about being with them, spending time with them, because although they have a particular area of SEND, doesn't put them all in the same box. They are still unique, just like anybody else, and I think that's the key. Always take them at board as individuals. That's it. So thank you, guys. Can I just say, but thank you so much, because I think you've done a really good job of getting across, and I think your poem was absolutely wonderful, and I really do think that it came across really well about the inclusion, and to make sure that, you know, there are hidden disabilities and not just to assume. And I think that's with every child, you know, that underneath there is a unique individual, and we really have to, you know, consider that. So absolutely brilliant, lovely presentation.
Well done. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, brilliant, well done. And Emma from Low Hill, are you still on the call?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh,
I'm
Emma,
just put my camera on.
thank you.
Hello.
Hello, Emma. Thank you. I just wondered if, you know, with the graduated approach, and it's lovely to hear about how that's being used in a nursery school, because sometimes I think we hear a lot of we hear a lot of stories around sort of finding it difficult to actually access you know, early years intervention. What would you say are sort of the biggest barriers when you're considering early intervention in that sort of early years setting?
I think some of the time scales that we're waiting for agencies is a bit of a barrier. So like in our nursery school, we have 2-year-olds up to 5-year-olds, but our 4 and 5-year-olds reception children are they usually have an Ehcp already to access a place in our inclusive provision. But our mainstream children, 2 and 3-year-olds, are not here with us for a very, very long time. And when you think that some of the parent discussions with parents is also can be a barrier, because parents have got to go through the process of maybe even grieving for the loss of a child that they'd kind of hoped and dreamed to have, and then in the most complex cases accepting that their child's going to have a different educational pathway. So sometimes they don't want to rush these assessments, and they don't always want agencies involved immediately. And my frustration can be that I know these waiting times and timescales for these referrals, and that you have to jump through quite a lot of hoops to get like reports written, so you can refer, and then for them to have to write a report first before you can ask for an Ehcp. So therefore that's a barrier, because I'd like to get these things started as early as possible, but then obviously I have to be mindful that parents need to be ready, and they need to have accepted and want that extra support. So in terms of the graduated approach, there's not many barriers for us, in the sense that what we do here and the way that we do it is very inclusive, it's open-ended, children are having lots of fun, and they can always get something new and learn from their starting points. So for those children, it's really easy to implement, and there's not very much that we need to add to what we do already. And that's the beauty of early years, isn't it? Because it is very child-centered, and our resources and things that we use and provide, it's what works for SEN works for everyone. If it's tactile, if it's sensory, and you learn through, you know, motivations, it's going to bring about the best possible learning for all learners. Whereas when it's that extra end where you're looking at maybe pursuing some assessments for ASD, or other things that need to be explored, and you need to get those agencies involved. And I think that's why we have our own in school, to be honest, because that just makes it that little bit easier then, and the wait times are a little bit less. But yeah, sorry, I've rambled on a bit too much there, but I think that's
No,
it really.
that's great. Thank you. Thanks, Emma. That's really helpful. And in the true spirit of equality, Matt, are you still there? I don't know if Matt was able to stay. Yeah,
able to
I was.
stay.
Because what I was going to do, what I was going to ask is around those sort of inspirations. And if you have been inspired in terms of wanting to find out more, I just wanted to remind you about those links, and we'll make sure you get copies of that PowerPoint and those links as well, to be able to access some of those wonderful CPD opportunities, those wonderful links that Matt was talking about, and also that sort of whole school, the whole SEND, where you're looking at that career pathway, because I think that could be something that you really sort of look at, you know, and think about along your own trajectory. Thanks, Dace.
The last thing from me, and then I'm going to hand over to Janet to close for today. We've got no more questions, but I think we do need to just pick up on this one point that we've got in the chat from Gillian Dixon, who says that here at North Tyneside Council, we have our presentation ceremony this afternoon to present our 19 learners with their SENCO certificates, which is so fitting after this brilliant presentation this morning. So thank you to everyone who has been involved. So well done, everybody, and we'd love to see the photos, and we'd love to hear all about that, so we can share it for inspiration.
Wow, absolutely. And wasn't that a wonderful celebration at the end of our conference? So what I do want to say is I want to say thank you to Stacey. Thank you for being such a wonderful host. Thank you. Thank you to Angie. And of course, thank you to Gillian as well. I also want to thank Karina for the work that she's done in initiating this and making all these things possible. Of course, a special thanks, and I'm looking to my right because I don't trust myself. I've been so inspired by all the presentations we've had. The students at Ullswater College, you have my heart. For Low Hill Nursery, Mcarthur, and everybody who's been involved in our conference today. It wouldn't be possible without tutors making this available to their students, and we wouldn't have a workforce if we didn't have students as motivated and as interested and as committed as you. Children and young people deserve people to look after them who want to be there and who want to make a difference. You've inspired us today by absolutely convincing us that the right people are in the right place. Thank you so much for everything that you do and everything that you will do to make that positive difference. Thank you. Look forward to speaking to you all soon.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Take care, everyone.